If You're Fat, Lose Weight is a podcast that welcomes conversation and debate. Please note that some of the opinions expressed by my guests and contributors do not reflect the beliefs of me and this podcast generally. We're not trying to offend anybody, but we are trying to encourage lively debate. Okay, welcome back to If You're Fat, Lose Weight, a common sense podcast about common sense topics for common sense people. And boy, do we have a great guest for you today. A man that I have known and been afraid of for 25 years, the very dapper in a white shirt, Mike Hogan. Welcome, Mike. Welcome. What an honor. Thank you for coming on. So we know each other because I dated you can fill in the blanks here if I miss anything. I dated your stepdaughter both freshman and senior year of high school in Northern California at San Mateo High. And, I think, I've always been afraid of you. And I think we should have a couple quick anecdotes here as to why that happened and how we know each other. And so first, your wife, Patty, probably the best looking mom of any of the people that I went to high school with. Would you agree with that? I mean,
most definitely. And by the way, she said hi, and she also said that your proposal in high school of a threesome with her and her daughter is still a hard no.
That's a real bummer. Well, okay. So, I always thought you and I had a nice relationship. I'm not sure you remember this, and I don't know if I'm getting the facts exactly right. But, I thought we had a nice relationship my freshman year. And then I don't know what happened. Me and my friend Ian Sells, who I haven't spoken to in about 20 years, I think we had some sort of I was dating Amanda, your stepdaughter at the time, and I think we had some sort of kissing foursome situation in a jacuzzi with two other girls. Of course, word spread around high school in a week, and I was at your house, and you stuck up for me. You said, he's telling you, Amanda, that he didn't do that, and you were like, guy code, and we were pounding, and it was great, and I really appreciated you for that. Of course, I was lying. I definitely did have a little cheating foursome, and I think our relationship kind of deteriorated from there. Would you agree with that?
Definitely deteriorated. I believe that it was more about being stood up at the prom.
Well, that was senior year, yes. And okay, so I asked Amanda to go to prom with me. Then I redacted on that the day before. It was a horrible move. One of the worst things I've ever done in my life. I have no excuse. And I was a bad person then. I'm trying to be a better person now. I don't know if that has happened. But, I feel very bad about that. There was some tomfoolery on her side. I think there was a hookup with the impossibly handsome John Hansen behind my back while we were dating, which I don't blame her. I mean, he's much better looking than me. But she wasn't fully innocent in this. But, what do we get by rehashing this? I mean, I honestly don't blame her.
Side of the story.
You didn't hear that? Well, we'll have to talk about that offline. Well, anyways, I appreciate you coming on. I put out on my social media that I was trying to, have a fun, interesting conversation with somebody who voted for Trump in 2016 and 2020. Your wife reached out to me and said you'd be interested, and other people reached out to me too. To be honest, to be fair. And they were peers of mine, and I wouldn't say this to their face, but, I'll say this on a podcast. I don't think I'm very smart, but I'm certainly smarter than the people that reached out to me in that. And I don't think it would have been a good conversation. I think that you are intellectually superior to me. And I look forward to having this discussion. And full transparency, we spoke a couple days ago, and, we hadn't spoken in 20 years or so. And your one condition for coming on here. Since the prom event, right? When we were 18, right? Yeah. So 22 years. And your one condition for coming on was that I would send you the unedited version of whatever this is going to be, whether it's audio and visual or just audio. And you have my firm guarantee on that. If we run this, you will have the full unedited version. And I got to be honest, if we run this, no matter how dumb I end up looking, we're going to run it unedited. And that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm not a perfect person. I don't know everything. I think that there are topics that people are afraid to discuss that I look forward to discussing. So anything goes. I think we should have a conversation about politics. And I'd like to start here. Where are you from? How old are you? What do you do? Just give us a little background of yourself. I met you in California. You now live in Texas. Give us, a couple sentences on you.
So, born and raised in Santa Barbara, California. I went away for high school. I was a boarder in high school in San Jose at Bellman. And then I went back east for school. Then I came back to Silicon Valley, started my first company. I've started a few companies since then. I've had 3 acquisitions of my companies. The last one was by Microsoft. And I have since kind of gone from starting all software companies. I've since gone from starting companies in serial, one after another, to doing them in parallel. And we currently run, I believe, 9 companies. And then we also build software for other companies. So I have an organization that does all of that. So that's
cool.
Kind of my origin story and what I do now.
Okay, and you live in Texas. Is that right?
I do. Yes. So California got a little too crazy for me. I'm fairly libertarian by nature, and California is very statist, very command and control. So that wasn't working for me. And at the same time, quite honestly, my 3 children, including Amanda, all moved to Houston and got involved in the oil and gas industry.
Oh, cool.
Well, one of my daughter Kendall moved out with her soon-to-be husband, who was in oil and gas, and she got involved in the news business. So she was a news reporter.
Oh, she's a news reporter. That's cool. TV.
Yeah. Well, she was until they had a vaccine mandate, and I was able to, and she was pregnant, and I was able to convince her not to do that, and so she came and joined one of my companies.
Okay, so you're a vaccine skeptic. Let's get that out of the way now. You are a visceral vaccine skeptic. I think that is one area we are not going to. That's not a fair statement.
No, it's not.
Okay.
No, I am by and large a very strong supporter of vaccines.
I'm sorry, the COVID vaccine. That's what I meant. So thank you for clarifying. Yes.
Oh, that's not actually a vaccine.
Okay.
What vaccines do is they provide durable and sterilizing immunity.
Yep.
The mRNA vaccines do not do that. So
correct. But I think it's a place we're not going to go. We agreed to not go there for a number of reasons, which we don't need to get into. But we're just not going to go there, and I think that's totally fair. And yes, I'm sorry for.
By the way, I'm happy to go there. I just don't want to go. I don't want to touch on the sensitive side of things, but listen, I'm actually very happy to go there.
Of course, and so my whole thing in having these conversations is to go anywhere, but not hurt anybody. And so I'm not. If we're going to go somewhere, we're going to go somewhere, and we're going to go everywhere. I'm going to ask questions, and it could get personal. It could get, but. And I know you don't care, but there are sensitivities within your family that I want to be respectful of. And I know you do too. And that's totally fine. And so we don't have to go there. So going back to politics here. So what as a libertarian, and I find myself as a person without a home in politics currently, and I find myself as I get older to be more of a libertarian, as a quote unquote libertarian, what do you want from your politics? What do you want from your politicians? What are you thinking about when you are deciding who to vote for?
In a word, gridlock. I want them to be so tied up that they don't actually do anything, because I don't want anything that comes out of government, because all they do is take our money and spend it on stupid stuff, and then they have a monopoly on force, which they like to apply to the people. So I want as little government as possible.
So you want as little government as possible. So that would mean pave the roads, deliver the mail, that kind of thing, and stay out of my life.
Yeah, I mean, we did all of that before we even had an income tax. But yes, as little as possible.
Okay. And can I ask you, how do you consume your news? And I think it's an important question in today's environment politically, because I think we can all agree that most people don't even agree on facts anymore. And I think that, to me, that's the major problem with any real discussion. And we're probably going to go places today that we're not going to agree on. You're going to say something to me that I don't know about. I'm expecting that. And I'm going to say to you, I don't know what you're talking about. And that's going to be fine. But I think it's important to understand where you go to consume your news and how you consume your news and how you do your research. Because I know when we spoke on the phone that you have a lot of, you do a lot of research and you pride yourself in that, from what I could tell. And you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. I describe myself as an infomaniac, starting with an I, not an N. I am constantly listening to podcasts. I consume a lot of news and commentary through Twitter. I watch almost no news TV. I read Zero Hedge and a couple of other sources, which can be called conspiracy theory site, I guess. But I like to just think that they're about 6 months ahead of everybody else. Podcasts, Twitter, and
so can you get
and then research, by the way, is totally separate.
Okay,
like I don't assume that those sources are news or are factual data per se. So, for example, I will go to the actual reports,
right, like the actual studies of what you're
and read those studies, meta studies, all of that.
Okay, so on Twitter, there is you can have it so it feeds, you can have it so it just shows you who you follow, or you can have it so it'll feed you what they think you'll click on. So do you which one do you have it for? I have it for just my followers. I used to have it where it would feed me, the algorithm would feed me things that they thought I would click on, and it just got overwhelming in my brain. So which one do you have it? What are your settings set to?
So I use the information that I collect for a variety of reasons, one of which is investment. Mm-hmm. And so I find that if I only follow my people I agree with, then I end up creating an echo chamber.
Right.
And it gives me a distorted view of reality. I already have that to some degree because I can't believe that so many people are deluded by the silliness that comes out of the news, kind of typical broadcast news. But even though my daughter worked in it, so I actually have it set to follow who they think I'll be interested in. But I also purposely follow people that I explicitly disagree with, because I think that it gives me a broader perspective. So
do I. And so what podcasts are you listening to? You don't have to give us all of them, but you can give us a few.
My First Million is fun and applicable to my business. I'd have to look at it. I listen to music and podcasts without necessarily thinking so much about the band or the source per se.
Got it.
But there's a variety of them. I could pull up my.
No, it's okay. That's fine. So for me, I'll just share what I do. I also get a lot of my news on Twitter, but I'm following people. I follow Fox News. I follow CNN. I follow different reporters that I think do a good job. I follow Ben Shapiro. I follow the Pod Save America guys. I'm sure you're aware who Ben Shapiro is. I don't know if you know who the Pod Save America guys are. I listen to both of those podcasts every day. I listen to The Daily every day. And I seek out long-form interviews with interesting people, like the Axe Files with David Axelrod, who, whether you agree with his politics, is an excellent interviewer. I don't always agree with his politics. Kara Swisher, a woman who, I think another excellent interviewer and puts people to the fire, puts people's feet to the fire when you listen to her. Scott Galloway, who I'm sure you're aware of, but but just for politics, that's kind of what politics, current events, that's kind of what I'm talking about here. And, like you, I think that the echo chamber, we can't agree on facts. It's because we're in our echo chambers. And it surprises me too. Anytime something important happens when I'm sitting at home in the evening, let's say, if there's news that breaks, I always turn on Fox News, even though I don't, that's not my political leanings. I always turn on Fox News and I just want to hear. I just want to hear what they're saying. And I probably started doing that when Trump was president, just to see if they were going to say anything bad about what I would always assume would be just unbelievable, to be honest, from a president. Not so much policy wise, but just the way he deals with things. Okay. So that's a little bit. Go ahead.
I will tell. Other than if you're fat, lose weight, I listen to.
Thank you for your support.
A couple of others. FS Insider, Financial Sense News Hour. I listen to Equity, Econ Talk, very good one.
Econ Talk, never heard of it. I'll have to check it out.
Odd Lots. Yeah, there's a number that I listen to. But the most fun in terms of picking up concepts and all, and in terms of they're having fun, so it makes it fun to listen to, is My First Million. Highly recommend you listen to that one.
Okay.
Now, in terms of like where I consume my news, I'll immediately go to Twitter for the breaking stuff. As you're saying, you'll turn on Fox News. I also sometimes use proxies, like when I was following the election news when Trump was first elected, I was mostly looking at the market futures.
Right.
Because the market futures, where people are betting their actual money, was to me more indicative of the outcome than what you were seeing on the screen. And so I like betting markets and markets in general, investing markets and betting markets as proxies for what people actually believe, as opposed to rampant virtue signaling that you find in or spin or whatever else that you find in much of the mainstream news.
It's interesting that you say that. So I think Twitter is for sure, although not as entertaining, it's certainly better for the election night results. There's a guy, David Wasserman. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He runs a website, Red District, I believe it's called. It's not important what he does. You should follow him on Twitter. What he does is he'll call races when he knows it's over. And he doesn't wait. He's not waiting for this, that, the other. He looks at all of the district data. He looks at what's been reported up to this point, and he calls. He's always first, and he is never wrong. And to your point about the betting markets, were definitely ahead on Trump in 2016. In 2020, I was sure that he was going to lose. I was sure that at some point it would feel like he was going to win. I was also following the odds. I actually thought he was going to lose by way more. He didn't. But I was following the odds, and I really didn't want him to win. I got emotional. And at one point, Biden was like plus 200. And Trump was like minus 500. And then they immediately took it down because the narrative had gotten out of whack. And it was a real money-making opportunity missed based on emotion. I'm trying to get better at that. Trading the markets, trading the political markets, trading sports markets, all of it. Anyways, thank you for that. Okay, back to you. 3-part question here. Are you a political person? Would you consider yourself a political person? And have you always been, or did something pique your interest? And then we'll go through. You say you're a libertarian. We'll go through who you voted for, and we'll start. We'll start in like 2000. But let's go. Let's just start there. Are you a political person? Have you always been?
So even though I don't take a huge interest in politics, politics takes too much of an interest in me. So I am forced to be a political person in that regard. In terms of who I voted for, So as I told you before in the pre-interview,
The pre-interview, yeah.
I did not vote for Trump in 2016.
Right.
It was very clear to me that he was far superior to Hillary, but I lived in California at that time, and so my vote was meaningless because Hillary was going to take the state no matter what. And so, as I typically did in California, I wrote in Thomas Sowell.
Thomas Sowell, the author, yes.
Yes, yeah.
Interesting.
I'm fascinated with economics. I'm more into economics than I am politics. I find that politicians are generally contemptible, and now we see all of this this noise coming out of Congress, out of the House, that we're going to make all of these radical changes that is red meat to the GOP. But in reality, they can make all of that noise because they know it won't get through Senate. It won't get the president's signature. So,
well, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that at the end here. But let me get real specific here. So in 2020, just so people understand your voting history, let's go through it. In 2000, and you were in California, so maybe you did the same thing when you voted for Thomas Sowell. In 2000, Bush v. Gore, when your vote didn't matter, but who'd you vote for there?
Bush v. Gore. Bush.
Okay, and Bush versus Kerry.
Bush. Not a fan of Kerry.
Obama versus McCain.
I don't know that I voted then. I didn't like either one, to be honest. Or no, actually, that was probably a Thomas Sowell.
Okay. Obama, Romney.
Sowell.
Interesting. Romney's not one of your guys.
No.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
No.
And you already said Trump, Hillary, and you explained why. And then Biden, Trump from Texas, where all I assume you were in Texas then.
Yes.
And your vote didn't really matter then. I mean, the Democrats thought maybe it would, but it never had a chance.
Yeah. No, I voted for Trump then because the first time Trump ran, I thought he was a wolf in sheep's clothing. I didn't think that he meant any of that. I was very impressed with his accomplishments, what he actually did. Instead of a typical politician who has a bias towards power and consolidating power, which Obama was great at, Trump had a bias towards action. He took a businessman's approach to it and did a number of things that other people had talked about.
Okay, so give us an example of that.
Moving the embassy.
Right. Okay, moving the embassy.
But he did a number of things. He made it. He reduced regulations.
He did do that.
Made it easier for businesses, and he provided much of the kind of economic foundation for us to be oil independent.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have a software company in oil and gas. So I'm not directly dependent on the price of oil and gas, but I am dependent on the activity in oil and gas. That's one of my companies. So
the activity meaning what? Meaning transactions?
As long as they're drilling.
Got it.
As long as they're drilling and completing wells and all of that, then that generates income to me.
Okay, and how's that going now under the Biden administration?
It's actually going well because Biden has made it constrained in terms of pursuing drilling on public property, and I think he's also made it much harder in certain offshore areas and things like that. But he's generally been harder on the industry, and so as a result, the price goes up, and so the activity goes up. So it's a bit of a conundrum in terms of Trump was better for overall productivity, but Biden is better for the economics.
Interesting. Supply and demand. Where does this company drill exactly? Do you know?
What company?
The software company that you are involved with.
Oh no. So we provide software for companies that are drilling.
Okay, so where are they drilling? That's what I mean. Yeah.
And actually, our area of focus is on completion. So completion is the frac, by the way. Frac is one piece of the completion. So, so we have companies in the Permian Basin, West Texas, East Texas, Bakken, a variety of locations.
Okay, and he's made it more challenging to drill in those areas, but he's raised prices, so net win?
Net win for the oil companies.
Right.
Generally, when oil companies are making more money, they're more willing to spend on software and things like that.
Right.
But if you're getting paid on a per well or per day or whatever basis, then you want more productivity. In other words, more wells. So they're doing fewer wells, but the economics are better.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for explaining that.
And it's not solely his administration. There are other characteristics like the price collapse, and,
of course,
and other things that have influenced it. But his administration has made it more challenging, and therefore less is being produced and more economic.
Right. So I think generally presidents get too much credit for influencing prices in every commodity and in stock prices, et cetera. It's not just their policies day one that they enact that affect all these things. Sure, it's a part of it, but like what you just said, like there's a lot more to it than just Biden being the president, or Trump.
Kind of like the quarterback of a football team.
Right.
Gets
exactly
the credit of the win or the loss, but a lot of it is determined in the trenches.
Right. And you know what? I think people understand that more than they do about the politics of things at this point. I mean, at least the loudest voices do. Okay. So back to consolidating power, what you said about Obama. Tell us exactly what you mean there.
Well, I think he was very good at working with the deep state and working with
the deep state, meaning what?
The unelected bureaucrats who run all of the administration. Again, if you think of it, the analogy as being the company. So if I'm brought in to head a company, and yet I cannot fire certain people because they have contracts and things like that. Let's say a union. Then the union, let's use the example of a car company. So I'm brought in to run the car company, but the union has existing contracts and existing economics, and they say this is what it is, and we ain't changing whether you like it or not. Then I can either befriend them and try to co-opt them and use them, or I can just go about doing the things that I can impact. And so I think that the deep state or unelected bureaucrats or whatever you want to call it, the people who don't leave Washington, basically, with every election. Have built up a tremendous power base, and they have tremendous leverage, and so they're able to use that. I think that Trump was quite naive in regards to how much power they had and how much power he would be able to use. He's probably used to the model of a company, a non-unionized company, where he had much more control over hiring, firing, and direction, and where you tell people to do things and they do it because they know their job is on the line. In the government, there are too many people where you tell them to do something and they may tell you to your face you're going to do it, they're going to do it,
and then they don't.
But they're going to do what then builds their base and supports their objectives.
So when you say the deep state and you say the people that are Washington lifers, are we talking about lobbyists? Or are we talking about the FBI? When you turn on Fox News, you're talking about the deep state being the FBI, spying on the Trump campaign and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Those talking points. Are we talking about all of those things? Or are we just talking about, I think most reasonable people would say that the lobbying, the people that benefit from American taxpayer money are leeches, to your point, on just the, on the periphery of government, and have power and have figured out how to enrich themselves by being, political leader adjacent. I think we can all agree that most practical people would agree that is a real problem. I think where you lose, where I part company with the people that I hear with Tucker Carlson on Fox News is the deep state, meaning the FBI. So what are your, I'm just trying to get granular and understand exactly what you're saying when you say the deep state.
Well, let me give you an example. I'm not sure whether this is the FBI or NSA. They probably both do this now, but so I have two software companies in cybersecurity. I have friends who were deep into government spook type stuff in cyber. So there is a rule, there is a law that the FBI and NSA cannot, or actually this was the NSA. The NSA could not basically investigate or cull through the data of the citizens, the people who live in the U.S. So what they would do is they would simply route the entire data flow up to Canada, then back in, and suddenly it was no longer domestic; it was international traffic, and they could get everything.
Interesting. Okay. So, and when did that happen? Any time?
A long time ago. Right. Long time ago, and I'm sure it's ongoing today. So they circumvent a lot of the checks and balances or constraints, and do what they want to do, and then use that information. And this has gone back to Hoover, and right. He had the goods on everyone. I think it's increasingly coming to the fore that they took out a president of ours in JFK.
I'll have to read about that. Well, I'll have to read about that. Yeah.
one could say Nixon as well. So I think that there's a tremendous. And by the way, was not a big
Nixon fan. Thank you for that caveat. Yeah.
So they have a tremendous amount of power, and they cater to their own base more so than the elected officials. So I think that the elected officials, very much like I was saying about Congress, they have the ability to make a whole bunch of noise and cater to their base and then use that to fundraise. But I don't know that at the end of the day they want to make these changes. I mean, look at Obamacare. When the Republicans had the House
and the Senate, yep.
They were unable. Hold on, before Trump got in, they had been passing all of these laws to undo Obamacare. Let's get rid of it. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. Then suddenly, like a dog that catches the car it's chasing, they have the House, Senate, and President. Oh, suddenly there's no Obamacare laws. Let's get rid of Obamacare. It's not going through because they know that would destroy their fundraising. So it's a bunch of kabuki theater that I see through. I don't believe it.
Okay, so
now you could say the same thing, by the way, about Trump. So on his original 2016 platform, he had a number of. I think there were 3 tenets that he was going to reshape the healthcare industry and make it more competitive. Publish pricing, standard pricing for everyone, things like that. It really would have done great things, but the night of, when he realized he was going to win, those things mysteriously went away and never came back. So, a lot of this stuff is for fundraising, and this is both sides. I mean, I'm fair on attacking both sides, but It's for fundraising purposes. It's red meat to the base, and none of them actually want to get it through.
Okay, so
a lot of them just want to keep their jobs.
well, that's a major problem in Washington. Term limits, I think, is something that most practical people would agree should exist, and not only, in my opinion, not only for congressmen, not only for senators. Obviously, the president has 2 terms, but I would also suggest that it would turn down the temperature on the Supreme Court fight if we had Supreme Court justices that get 18-year terms or something that we could all agree on, a nice, plentiful term. But each president gets to, every 2 years, elect somebody. You might disagree with that. I think it would turn down the rhetoric on all of this stuff. I think that there is more that we agree on, and we've already started this conversation. There's more that we agree on than we disagree on, and we probably would not think that if we weren't to sit down and have this conversation. You can comment on that, but I just want to close the circle on one thing. Obama, deep state, consolidating power. So you're saying that he went out and he consolidated. He brought in all the leeches in Washington and brought them into his tent. Is that your what you're saying?
I would say that, and he put in people who were definitely loyalists to him, like Eric Holder. And whereas Trump, I think, naively put in people who he thought had experience to do the job, which is what a business person does. But found out that he was catching quite a few knives in the back.
Right. He found out that loyalty,
which is why I think it would be interesting if he got another term. Not that I'm necessarily promoting or would vote for him.
We're going to get to that. Yes,
but that would be interesting. That would be interesting because now I think he's learned. After catching so many knives, I think he would probably do it more the way Obama did it and put more loyalists in key positions and then just be a bulldozer.
And is that something that intrigues you? Bulldozing the entire infrastructure of our government?
I would like to see our government about 5% of the current size. So yes, bulldozer would probably do the trick. Well, I don't think he would do that, by the way.
Well, it's not. I mean, It's not politically.
I would love to see that.
Yeah. Well, the far left also thinks that we should overhaul the entire system. They wouldn't say that it should be 5% of what it is now. They would probably say that it should be more. But talking points similar on both sides, even though their way to accomplish it is very different. Okay, so let's go through a couple of Trump's policies, and I'd love to hear just your general thoughts on them. Judges. The president gets to put judges up and they get confirmed in the Senate for the people who don't know that. Obviously, Supreme Court justice people know about, but all the way down the federal judiciary, Trump appointed a lot of judges. Obama appointed a lot of judges. Trump appointed more than he appointed and got them confirmed. And then Biden has, in the first 2 years, gotten many more than Trump did in his first 2 years, which seems to just be what happens now if you have the presidency and the Senate. But what are your thoughts on conservative judges compared to more liberal leaning judges?
So the judges, their names, all of that is not top of mind for me. But the last 3 judges, very disappointing to me.
The last three judges on the Supreme Court.
Yes.
So Amy Coney Barrett,
Ketanji
Brown Jackson, and Bardo Kavanaugh.
And Kavanaugh, yeah.
Brett Kavanaugh. Okay. Yeah. Why are they disappointing to you?
Just the way they've gone has not. I'm more of an originalist when it comes to the Constitution. It says what it says. It means what it says. And they should be enforcing that. And they are not. So, yeah.
Okay. So you're just a constitutionalist. And some of the things that you're just a constitutionalist. That's what you're originalist.
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you okay, that's good.
I'm an originalist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It works.
Okay. Okay. We're going to get into that. The tax breaks for business.
By the way,
yes.
Let me just state one more thing.
Please.
The reason it originally works a lot of people, particularly on the left, like to say, "Oh, well, things are so much different now."
Well, things are very different. Yes.
We have airplanes, we have machine guns, we have all of this stuff. It's totally different, and so that stuff doesn't apply. What those people fail to recognize is that the Constitution was written based on human nature, which does not change. Human nature, the accumulation of power, greed, all sorts, and positive stuff as well. That is what it was written for. It was not written for, when you're loading a musket, that kind of stuff. It is all about human nature, and it's a shame that we have moved away from it, because it did act as a good constraint on the power of the government, both elected and unelected.
Okay, so that's a great, since you did that great explainer, let's talk about the Second Amendment. Let's talk about it a little bit based on what you just said. So what are your thoughts on guns, and what are your thoughts on the availability of guns when you talk about they didn't have, weapons of war, whatever you didn't say that, machine guns, I think you said. What are your thoughts on gun control? And the Second Amendment says we have the right to bear arms, to keep and bear arms. So should there be any regulation based on, from an originalist like yourself, what are your thoughts on that?
So what that originally meant, now think about the fact that they had just finished fighting a war against the British. Mm-hmm. And so what they recognized was that they needed the ability to have those arms so that they could protect themselves against enemies, foreign and domestic.
Correct.
And domestic.
Got
to repeat that one.
And domestic. There's a government tyranny thing here that people always bring up on the right, on the right here. And they're, the COVID situation, you can draw, I don't draw this direct line, but if you believe that the government is out to get you, and you think a COVID vaccine mandate is an example of government tyranny, then I can see how you would want to, be able to arm yourself and protect in case the government comes and knocks on your door and is going to make you do something that you really don't want to do actively.
So I wouldn't say that the government is out to get you. I would say that the government doesn't much care about us one way or another. What they're out to do is to consolidate power and to build their base. And by that, I mean their organizational power, personal power, things like that. It's a basic human nature issue. So you don't really matter so much to the government one way or another. They don't really care about you.
I agree.
But if in the exercise of power, in order to build their power base, they realize that forcing a mandate on you makes them more powerful, puts them in the limelight, like a Dr. Fauci, who unfortunately went to the same alma mater as me.
Tough break for your alma mater. Boy, oh boy, Fauci.
I know. It is really difficult to have
that guy on your record. Yeah. Okay.
Dr. Mengele on your record. Yeah. Which, by the way, I'm also happy to talk about what he did with AZT and the AIDS, and now with the vaccine and the elimination of actual working medicines. But anyway, so yeah, I think what they do is consolidation of power, and they don't really care about you. And that balance of power is the weaponry that is allowed by the government to be used, held by the people. So, so I don't think that has changed from the weapon of war. What it originally meant was, if it was something that could be used by the military, they wanted the people to have them, because they wanted the people to act as a balance to the military, to be the military, and to act as a balance of power that would naturally consolidate in Washington or the states. So I'm very much a federalist, but I'm very supportive of the Second Amendment.
Okay, so should there be any?
Let me give you an interesting anecdote.
Please.
So
please.
It used to be that you could only have weapons that were used by the military, because the whole purpose was that the people were or could become the military as needed.
Okay.
So they required that you only have weapons used by the military. So there was a case law, I forget the name, where somebody was caught by I believe the ATF or whatever organization at the time, with a sawed-off shotgun. And they said, that's not used by the military, so you cannot have it. That is an illegal firearm. And what was interesting is, in prosecution of that case, the government lied and said that they never used sawed-off shotguns, when in fact they had used them for prisoner control. So that would have made it a legal weapon. And this is again why not a big fan of government in general.
So when was that? When was that? What are you talking? What year? Any idea? Just give us a general.
I think it was back in like the 40s.
Okay. Okay.
I think it was in the 40s.
Got it. Okay.
40s or 50s, maybe in the 50s. But you can look up the law.
Okay, but okay.
Post it in the notes.
So let's. Okay, but no, let's drill down. Should there be any gun regulation today?
Okay, but first, I just want to point out, I am giving you homework.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate that.
Back in your high school days.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, just want to maintain that power balance.
I'm still petrified of you.
And keep you intimidated.
I'm still petrified.
Yeah, that's my goal.
Yeah.
So today there are regulations, of course. Aside from certain federal licenses, almost nobody can have automatic weapons or select fire. We can only have semi-automatic.
Okay.
Now, a lot of people look at those, look at the AR-15 and say, "Oh my God, this is a weapon of war."
Mm-hmm.
Untrue. Weapon of war that is used by the military has select fire. You can flip it to auto, you can flip it to 3-round burst, or you can go semi-auto. Whereas those that we can buy are only semi-auto. And a lot of people look at those scary black rifles and say, nobody would use this for hunting. Not true. You can take that same base, and this is why the AR-15 is so popular, and you can replace some of the plastic components, metal components, with various different uppers, turn it into wood, have a very small magazine, and then it's a hunting rifle.
Okay.
So I could actually take one apart in front of you, put it together, and you'd say, that's a legal gun. And then I put it back to the black rifle and say, that gun should be illegal, because one is for hunting and the other is not.
Okay.
But that's untrue.
Okay. So again, that is all great. Semi-automatic, automatic. Thank you for the education. Is it okay for people when they're 18 years old to be able to walk into a gun shop and either get a gun right away, or in certain states have to wait a couple weeks? And compared to, let's just call it a car. When you drive a car, you have to get a license. You have to take a test. You have to go sit with a guy in your car and drive around and parallel park and show that you can operate an automobile, and which also kills a lot of people. For me, the comparison of, I understand the Second Amendment. Cars are not in the Constitution. You're an originalist. I get that. The access to guns in this country is something that I think is a major problem. We can dance around every single nuance about semi compared to regular, the Constitution, etc. We can dance around all of it. There are more guns to people in this country, which is insane, and the access to guns is easier here than anywhere else in the world that's civilized. And you talk about government having, I'm sorry. You talk about civilians having the same access to guns as like the army or the defense. In Israel, okay, you can walk around. I've been to Israel 7 times. You can walk around. It's mandatory that you do some service there. Every single person has to go unless you're a really religious Jew. And you learn how to operate a weapon, and they carry them. They're 18-year-olds in full army regalia across the country every single day carrying, I'm not a gun expert, you are, semi-automatic, major, whatever automatic weapon, okay, carrying them in the streets. And you don't hear about mass shootings on a day-to-day basis. And I'm sorry. That's just that, like, we can talk about the actual facts, okay? And then we can talk about what's right and wrong. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And you can push back on me and tell me I'm an idiot, and I'm fine with it. Please.
Okay. I think that's a given, but let me just delve into it a little bit.
Which part? More. The idiot part, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Although my wife calls me she calls me an idiot savant.
Oh.
Usually she shortens it by leaving the savant out. It's faster, but
nice.
So the gun thing. How many firearms have you purchased in your life?
0.
So
how many firearms have you purchased?
So you're a Twitter expert. Oh, I don't talk about that. But I have. I will say that I have.
Okay.
But I don't discuss having any firearms whatsoever. So had you purchased a firearm, and depending on where you went, you might realize that you have to take a written test in some places, to qualify and get a certificate, particularly in California. And then
we're not talking about California. We're not talking about New York, though. I'm not talking about those places. But continue.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, in a lot of places you have to do this, and then they do a background check, which is, I believe, is fairly universal. And they look into you and all of that. So there is some analysis there. People can go in. You like to use the car example, but people can go in and get alcohol, and alcohol has resulted in more deaths than guns on an annual basis. And yet people can go in at 21 and purchase alcohol without any test or any of that. If you want to go down that path.
But specifically, why does it happen in this country? Specifically, you can call me a Twitter expert, and that's fine. Every single thing that I read says that there are more guns in this country than people. So okay. I might be a Twitter expert. I'm not saying I know every gun law in every state. What I hear often is about the violence in Chicago. Okay, this is something I hear about all the time in my podcasting listening. And it's very difficult to get a gun in Chicago, but you could drive to Indiana, pick up a gun on the day that you want to buy it, and bring it right into Illinois. And so,
okay.
So I don't know if that's true. I've heard that 1,000 times. Go ahead.
What you believe is that laws are going to result in a change. So if we pass laws to take guns away from law-abiding citizens, because those are the only ones that follow laws, you think that will change, that will reduce the shootings and presumably all violent crime?
No, I'm not saying that by any stretch. And to be honest, I used to think that all guns should be banned and blah, blah, blah. And I was a liberal and I sat in my little Northern California place and whatever. I used to think that. And then I heard, and I'm just telling you about my personal journey on guns. It was very late in my teens, early 20s. I heard a story about a woman a single mom, was lying on her couch and she had ordered a gun, and she was in a place where maybe she hadn't ordered a gun or she wanted to get against something. She was in a place. Anyways, an attacker came in and raped her in front of her children, and then fled. And she had wanted to get a gun. She didn't have a gun. And that got me thinking, okay, so there are many single mothers in the world, and they should have the opportunity to protect themselves in certain areas. We have a Second Amendment for a reason, to your point. But there is also the other side of this, which is we're the only country where this stuff happens at the level that it happens to. Okay, whether you want to agree, it's civilized country. I'm not saying that it's politically palatable to go and take people's guns. What I am saying is there should be a way for us to make it universal. Okay, you talk about government paving the roads and delivering the mail. There, in my opinion, there should be a way for us to come to an agreement on you can get a gun, you can get any type of gun, really, but there are going to be steps that you have to take to purchase that gun. And I will say this. I will say that I agree with you. There's a major problem with, and I don't know how to solve it. There's a major problem with the amount of guns that are currently on the street that non-law abiding citizens can get their hands on and use. And I don't have all the solutions. Okay. And that's a real problem that I don't know how to solve. But to me, the idea that we haven't addressed this and there are some common sense things that, okay, for instance, my kids go to private school, okay? And, a liberal talking point is, of course they do, right? Yeah. But no, in Florida, the schools are not great. But yes, of course they do. I went to public school. My kids go to private school. But no, the kids can't see guns. We can't put a guard at every school. Actually, there are 2 Israeli special force guys that sit at my kids' school at the front of their school with a I don't know what kind of gun, but a very scary looking gun as the 3 to 10-year-olds come into the school. And you know what? They're not any worse for it. They're not. Okay. So I'm not some flaming liberal that is just, whatever, like, we got to get rid of. No, I'm not that. But this is a common sense issue. And you say law abiding people to take away the gun. Most law abiding people, I think, would be really interested in regulation. I'm a Twitter expert, like you called me, but I read statistics that most gun owners and most hunters welcome regulation. They don't need the gun. They don't need the gun the week they need it. They can go hunting in a month if they have to jump through hoops to keep their kids safe. So,
okay.
And by the way, I have been hunting. Just a point of clarification. I have been hunting. It was a tremendous amount of fun. And I will buy a gun at some point within the next 5 years. Just so we're clear. Continue.
And I think you should come by here and we'll do some shooting clays. Mm-hmm. You'll love it.
I plan to. Shooting clays is like the most fun thing I've ever done. Continue.
Yeah. You need to get out more. But okay. So let me unpack that. Is your concern the regular murders that are taking place in our large liberally controlled cities like Chicago, which is predominantly drug related and predominantly black on black violence? Or is your concern the mass shootings by youth?
The things that get the most attention, unfortunately, are the mass shootings by the youth. I'm concerned about it all.
Okay. So let's go after that one. Because the vast majority of the shootings in our liberal cities are handguns.
Yes.
And so that's a whole other story, mm-hmm. because I'm sure that you're much more concerned about those scary black rifles, the AR-15. By the way, do you know what AR stands for?
No. What is it? I could Google it. I would take a guess, but I don't want the ridicule.
Guess.
I don't want the ridicule from you.
Oh, but you do.
No, I honestly have no idea. I mean, my mind went to automatic rifle, but I'm sure that's wrong.
It is. It's Armalite rifle.
Okay, well, that's pretty close.
They are not automatic.
Okay, so
nobody gets an automatic.
Semi-automatic. Excuse me.
Semi-automatic.
Yeah, go ahead.
Which means one bullet for each trigger pull.
Right.
As opposed to hold the trigger and okay, so if we go to the mass shootings, Now I'm gonna get your podcast banned here, but I'm just gonna say it.
Mm-hmm.
SSRIs. Are you familiar with the term SSRI?
No.
I believe it's selective serotonin receptor inhibitors.
Mm-hmm.
It's a class of drugs that is used for treatment of youth. We do this here in the U.S. We give them away like candy to the youths who are going through issues. And in most other countries, it's black label, can't be used for youths. Now, the challenge is, without getting too technical here, that the way the human brain evolves, it's not, or let's say it this way, it is susceptible to a particular aspect of the SSRI until the age of 25. So if you look at the vast majority of shooters, there are some that are a bit older. Just recently, a bunch of very elderly Asian guys are doing mass shootings, which is very odd to me. But the vast majority previously have been young individuals on SSRIs.
Young individuals on these pills, you're saying? Are they pills?
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I've never heard of this.
I don't.
Go ahead.
Yeah, they're all the depression pills, the anxiety.
So they're
pills.
Antidepressant. They're antidepressant pills.
Yeah, that's one way of saying it.
But do they? You're saying they do work or they don't work, or you're saying that these people are clinically depressed and that's why they're shooting people?
No. Without making any comment on whether or not they work on depressed people or they just turn you into veg, I don't know. It's not something I've studied, but I have studied the impact of SSRI. So in a very small fraction of people, it turns them into rage monsters. And that results in both homicidal and suicidal activity, both ideation and activity. So if you look, for example, at I don't know why I know this, Dylan Klebold and who was the other lunatic out of the kind of the original mass shooters, that were going for the high score at Columbine.
Mm-hmm.
They were both on SSRIs. Almost all of the mass shooters are on SSRIs. And they, as I said, they turn a small fraction of people into rage monsters. Those rage monsters then go for high score mass shootings. That's just that. It is what it is.
That is what it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, the pharma community doesn't want you to know that or talk about that. So this may now be unsearchable, but that is what it is. And so, yes. So when somebody goes in to buy any kind of firearm, I would be totally fine with somehow finding out whether or not they are under the age of 25. It's 25 or 26, and are on SSRIs, or anyone in their household is. Because, as the lunatic up in Connecticut, he did not own the guns, but he killed his mom and took her guns and used them. But he was also on SSRIs. So, yeah, SSRIs are a huge problem. I don't think we should be giving them to people who are young like that, unless, of course, they are in a padded room for the remainder of the period.
Okay,
but they definitely should not have access to guns.
Okay, so let's I want to address that. So pharmaceutical companies and just big pharma and et cetera, and pills get FDA approved, and pills get approved, and they go on the market, and they're on the market for years. They can be on the market for months, and then there's some adverse effects, and they get taken off the market. And that happens all the time. The medical community is my opinion is wonderful, but most advancements in medicine happen here. And most advancements in treatments happen here. They also make a tremendous amount of mistakes, and you should always go in with your eyes wide open, not fully believing every single thing that your doctor says about anything that they're prescribing to you. All that being said, I don't know what you're talking about, SSRIs. I will do some research into it. It's still, to me, is an unsatisfactory response. To you, maybe it is, and that's fine. You and I are not going to solve this issue, but I'm happy that we talked about it, and we can agree to disagree and move forward because there's other things I want to talk about. Unless there's anything else you want to say about it.
Let me just throw something out. And I haven't been to this website in several years, but there was a website called SSRI Stories, and you pull that up, and it just goes page after page after page after page of lists of people who committed suicide, homicide, on while on SSRIs, all youths. It's unbelievable that we continue to give this stuff away. Generally, as a general comment on the pharma stuff, every drug has side effects. Every drug to your body is foreign and it's considered a poison to some degree. I stay away from drugs as much as possible. And yes, I find that too many doctors are basically pharma salespeople. And so I do my own research and try to avoid as much as possible.
Okay, well, thank you for saying that. And I think that's people can check out that website if they're going to let us run this, and we can agree on a lot of that. So okay, let's just go back to Trump here. Let's talk about just quickly a couple things he did. You liked it, you didn't like it. You didn't like the judges. Surprising. Did you like the tax breaks for business for individuals?
Tax breaks, good. Generally speaking, I want to starve the government. I think there should have been more on subsequent spending reductions. So
right. Well, we're going to get to that here in a second. First step, which was the criminal justice reform that he enacted, that actually got really no press, because it should be probably a liberal talking point and something that they really wanted. It got very little press, but I think it was important. Criminal justice reform is something that both sides have wanted. It was bipartisan, but it isn't part of anything that anybody talks about him. You like that?
Yeah. Okay. Generally speaking, I like giving the judges more personal leeway. I think that's a good thing.
Okay.
I will say, by the way, it has been a while since I've cared about Trump or looked into Trump's successes or failures.
No problem.
So not a lot of that is top of mind. But
no problem.
But yeah, generally speaking, I was a fan of what he did with the reform, both on the prison side, on the sentencing side, a lot of that.
Same. Baghdadi, he got. He did a good job eradicating ISIS. The Abraham Accords, as a atheist Jew, something I really liked. Somebody who cares a lot about Israel. Tariffs on China. I think people don't really understand what tariffs are, which is fine. We're not going to go into that because there's other things I want to get to. I think the idea is good. I don't know if the execution was perfect. I don't know if you have any 1 or 2 second sentences thoughts on that.
I would clarify. It was against China, though.
China, exactly. Well, if you listen to this podcast, you'll understand that Trump and both Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump both advertise on this podcast, so it's pretty good. I'm sure you haven't listened to a full episode, but you can hear that. Okay, some of the worst things, from my opinion, that I think he did, just our image globally. I don't know if that, just the image of America electing a guy like him. Your response will be, well, Biden can't, walk a straight line or speak a complete sentence, which we'll get to. But just the buffoonery of Trump with the way he looks and the way he speaks, I thought was a negative. The worst thing to me, I think the worst thing that he did as a president was saying that he agreed with Putin when he was standing next to Putin in Helsinki about them meddling in our election, whether or not it helped, whether or not it got him over the line. I think he views everything from a very Trump-centric lens, and he probably was, his thinking is, well, I don't want anybody taking any of the credit for what I think I deserve, so I'm going to agree with Putin on the world stage. To me, that was horrid. Obviously, dealing with COVID, and then January 6th. I would love to get your thoughts on January 6th. We can go into it as much as you want, or not. And that to me, that's my biggest problem with him. I mean, I never would have voted for him before, but after his refusal to concede and have a peaceful transfer of power, that to me was the end of ever considering him for anything. I mean, I never would before, but that was really the straw that broke my back. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of those things that you wanted to talk about or comment on.
Okay, actually, I want to talk about another fairly timely topical thing.
Please.
Is Ukraine Russia?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you fall on Ukraine Russia?
Where I fall is I think that Biden has threaded the needle here very nicely. I think that it would be better if we weren't worried about provoking them. I think they've proven to be a paper tiger. I think we should be supporting Ukraine every which way possible with more force earlier on. I think we were worried about provoking them, Russia. I mean, and I think it's great that we're supporting them, and I think that it's great that we're the global force for good, even though we do a lot of bad stuff, and that we stand by our values in that way without putting boots on the ground. That's what I really think. I'm sure you disagree. I can tell by the way you're sitting there and your face, and I'm happy to hear it. So go ahead.
I think that your opinion formed by mainstream media is exactly what I expected. I have a very different opinion.
Please.
So let me start by saying that I believe that Putin is a murderous thug. No question about it. Bombing his own people to rally them to war. Doing a number of things where he clearly has murdered people in order to achieve political objectives, and he's a total thug. Agree with all of that. I don't see Zelensky as being much better, if at all better. So we had an agreement. I don't know the name of the agreement, but with Russia, where we said, NATO will not make moves into the buffer zone. So there's a buffer zone around Mother Russia, and we will not, move 1 inch further, kind of thing. Same thing with them putting missiles down in Cuba. That's within our, strike zone, too fast to react, whatever you want to say about it. Can't have missiles there using, Cuban Missile Crisis. Same exact thing in Ukraine. Ukraine is also one of the most corrupt places in the world, where corrupt politicians of all flavors. And by the way, this is not just Joe and Hunter, but also includes Romney and his family members. No, this is across the board.
I haven't heard that spin. Interesting. Okay.
Oh yeah.
By the way, none of what you have said so far I disagree with. Continue.
And so basically, Ukraine, much like Crimea was used by the Russians, is a way of recycling funds. We're now finding that there's a tie between the funding that was going to Ukraine, some of which was flowing into FTX. FTX was funding predominantly Democrat politicians. So there's this incestuous money cleansing.
I have not heard that about FTX. You'll have to send me that, and maybe we can link to it.
Okay. Unfortunately, I'm giving you tasks and homework, not the other way around.
Okay, fine. Fair.
So that's not how it works.
Okay, I'll Google and then we'll link to it if I can find it. Yes. If it's on Google. Okay, go ahead. Yes.
No, it's definitely out there.
Okay.
So then I look at what Zelensky has done is basically used his people and his land at the behest of U.S. politicians for some very dirty things, and it's absolutely criminal. So the fact that he has outlawed all competitive political parties. Are you familiar with that one?
No.
He has outlawed the church.
Okay.
Are you familiar that he, for years, was bombing the Donbass, the eastern portion of the country, which is predominantly Russian and Russian speaking?
Are they happy that Russia's there? I heard they're not happy, but you would know.
The people in the east,
yeah,
yes,
they're happy
yes.
that Russia's
and
there.
They had a vote as to separating or going with Russia, and he outlawed the vote and said that if anyone voted, there were these extreme penalties.
Right.
So the whole concept of this is defending democracy is total BS.
Okay.
It goes against our agreements with Russia. And
it goes against our agreements with Russia. How?
Because we said that we would not make any efforts to move NATO into Russia. I think it was a week or a couple weeks before.
We sought Ukraine, or did they seek us to join NATO? Is that what you're saying?
We made noise about encouraging Ukraine to join NATO. So Cackling Kamala was out there giving a speech about
Cricket Hillary,
Ukraine.
Yep.
What's that?
Well, the nicknames are great. Cackling Kamala. It's great. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
She does have a terrible laugh.
Horrible.
She laughs at the most inappropriate
horrible
places.
Terrible. Yeah.
She kind of gets lost in a sentence and then just starts cackling.
She's a horrid politician.
But anyway,
yes, go. Yeah.
So we had prior agreements that we would not do this. She was out there shortly before the incursion, and after all of the bombing, after we had gone in and screwed with their elections and put in our puppets. All of this is very well known.
Yeah.
Although it's not publicized in the mainstream media,
Got it.
But it's out there.
Yes.
And it's very factual. And she'd been out there talking about making Ukraine part of NATO. So all of this going on basically left Putin with very little to do about that. The other thing is, it's their only deep water warm port is in the Ukraine. So they have to have this in order to be able to. Russia has to have this in order to be able to exert power in the oceans. So so there was just no way we were going to cut them off and basically cripple them as a political entity, embarrass Putin. Again, not a fan of Putin, not a fan of Russia. So this was a setup. This was all about creating war. And
so this was a setup by Biden, is what you're saying, to create war.
I don't know if it's necessarily Biden,
Okay.
but again, I would say it's definitely a setup by the people who profit off this. So there are people who profit, politicians, both sides, through the recycling of funds through corrupt nations like Ukraine.
Yep.
No-show jobs, things like that.
Right.
And then there are a lot of well-lobbied war infrastructure. Like the former president, was it Eisenhower, who warned us about the military-industrial complex. So those guys make a ton of money by selling weaponry to war. And so, hey, if we can create a war, then a ton of money, I think it's now somewhere around 120 billion, flows into that war, which flows into their pockets, which flows back into the pockets of, and the election committees and all of that, of politicians. So yeah, it's all dirty. And Trump went in there, and people were deathly afraid of Trump starting World War III. He was going to go to Korea and all of this. What he recognized is, if you keep them on edge, they will not attack you.
Or if you write them love letters.
They're a little bit afraid.
Yeah.
They're a little bit afraid that you're crazy.
Right. Well, he definitely accomplished that, for sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just got a message.
And hence no war.
Hence no war.
Period of peace.
Hence no war. So you think, we have 4 minutes. Okay. Quickly. You think if Trump was still the president, Putin would not have done this?
No question.
Okay. And in literally 90 seconds, and I'm going to cut you off, what should our response have been to Russia engaging? You're saying all the stuff we inquired, we made overtures to Ukraine with NATO, blah blah blah. All the stuff that all the stuff that you said happened, which we can agree to disagree on some of that, but we're not going to go point by point.
Even though you have no facts.
What? Well, we'll go back to Google, okay? But and I'll do my homework. But all of that happened. Putin invades Ukraine. What do we do?
Well, hold on, Joel.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm punching you and you punch me back, the question should not be what should we do about Mike getting punched by Joel.
Okay.
It should have been what the hell were we doing?
Okay, so you're
Mike punching Joel.
Okay, but I'm asking you about the response. You're just saying we did what we had to do after we made the colossal mistakes that we made. Basically.
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Okay, so what are you saying?
We wouldn't have. By the way, Russia's winning, and I believe that during this winter offensive, they will crush Ukraine.
Okay, well, we're going to see about that.
But my comment is. It was the situation that we created that created the response.
Okay, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
And by the way, look at Japan. Mm-hmm. The way we got Japan into the war to bomb Pearl Harbor, we now know that we had decrypted their information. We knew that they were going to bomb Pearl Harbor. We let it happen. Mm-hmm. How did we get them into the war? We blockaded them so they couldn't get oil. They were and food because they were an island. They were totally dependent on foreign oil. When we blocked that, they had a period of time during which they had oil to either do something about it or they could starve in the cold dark.
Okay. So
we pulled them into the war. We did the same thing with Ukraine.
All right. So that's what we do. So do you believe that America is a global force for good or that you don't subscribe to that?
I would say both. We go in both directions.
And are you happy to be an American?
Absolutely. I'm extremely proud of the American way.
And do you think that we should have a presence that we should be policing the world?
That not so much.
Okay.
Well, by the way, I am not a fan of Trump's personality. Well, I wouldn't call him so much buffoonery. He's puffery, New York.
Yep. New York. Yeah.
But I would say that we were much more respected on the world stage than we are now.
We can agree to disagree there.
Liked us.
We can agree to disagree there. But I understand your point.
He was right about Germany and their energy policy, wasn't he?
He was dead right about that.
When they laughed at him.
He was dead right.
When they laughed at him.
A lot of people laughed at him. And he was right. He was right about a lot of stuff. Okay. Mike, thank you. We have to go. They told me. We should do this again. And we can talk about more. Thank you for being a good sport. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for engaging respectfully. I really am still afraid of you. And I really enjoyed the conversation. And we'll definitely do a follow-up. Thank you very much.
Stay intimidated.
Yeah.
We'll talk again.
All right. Thanks, Mike.